new lecture on French astrology, I'd like to describe a certain process which has been dominant among astrologers in France for the last decades. It is what I would call quantitative astrology, which is a rather strange process, in fact. Let's take a very simple example for a start. The question of the four elements. Some astrologers whom I interviewed recently tell me that they will decide which element of the four elements is dominant in your chart, and they would count the number of planets which are present in each group. As you know, there are three signs by element: Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius for fire, and Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn for earth, and etc. So they do not care about which planet is or not. What is important is the number of planets which are present in a certain group of signs, which is a very interesting point. I don't think it was like that in the past. I don't think that in classical astrological literature they would advise to count the number of planets in each element. But it's also possible to go further and to say, well, for instance, in mundane astrology, André Barbeau, as probably some of you know, has created a sort of curve of scheme where he counts the interval in degrees between the planets within a group of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. He counts how many degrees separate at most these planets one from the other. And here also, he doesn't care what planet it is about. He only takes the group of planets as a whole, and he will reach the possibility of calculating a sort of coefficient or sort of scale, which will say, well, it's very low or very high, and it has for him meanings in terms of tension or detente or peace and war, etc. So there is this tendency. Also, Volgin, for instance, has written a book on the calculation of the dominant planet, of the first planet in a way, and he calculates, he's making sort of additions of the different criteria, number of aspects, and rulerships, etc., etc. So it's also here something which is a matter of quantity of numbers, and of course, in this system, all the planets are in solidarity. All the planets are interdependent. There is nothing like studying one specific planet. A planet is important in chart by comparison with other planets, which are more or less important or powerful. This idea that a planet is important in a chart by comparison with other planets, relatively to other planets, is for me a problem, because I don't think there is this sort of interdependency between the planets. And Barbeau himself, when he made studies on Saturn and Neptune cycle, he doesn't include other planets in this system. He is only following the process of this group of planets, these two planets. So the idea that everything is connected is not necessarily acceptable in astrology, and this is a problem, you know. So this approach, which first I remember a long time ago, maybe more than 20 years ago, I invented sort of, it was 30 years ago, I suppose, I invented some sort of system of that sort, you know, where you count how many planets are. For instance, you divide the zodiac in 4 parts, or you divide according to the angles, the chart according to the angles, and you calculate how many planets are in each angle. You know, whatever, doesn't matter what planet. The point is how many planets are in angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, angle 4, and that's all. So this is a very meaningful attitude towards astrology, to work according to such a method, and it is obviously comfortable in a certain way, because theoretically you do not have to decide anything. The theory is zero here. No? There is no necessity to create a sort of astrological model, astrological pattern, where you have a structure. No, you just make the chart, and the chart speaks for itself. The chart will say, well, you know, this person is more fire than earth, or this person is Martian because Mars is as a central position in the chart. That's all. You know, it is a sort of MicroStrategy which is dominant compared to vis-a-vis MicroStrategy. You know? The practician is the one who decides what you are according to your chart, and not any attempt of theorizing astrology. I belong to the other school, and I present Saturn as being the main cycle, and and I don't want to hear about the fact that at a certain moment there is Pluto at that point and aspecting Uranus. I don't consider the context. Why? I explained that many times already. I think that astrology is created from a choice. Astrology doesn't take the whole structure of astronomy as a fact. Not in the past, and not in the present, not in the future. So, once you have made the choice that Saturn will be the planet of astrology, you have to stick to that. You don't have to interfere with other factors, whatever they are. And this is a great deal of discussion, which shows the differences of approaches that astrology has in its pocket. And we have to be aware that astrology is not united. It's not everybody doesn't think the same way. From that point of view, I will say that one thing which is very embarrassing when you meet astrologers is the fact that they don't even care to explain themselves. They say, well, it's like that, well, it works. And when I think it works, it's all once more the will of the basis of the practicians to dominate. They say, well, we don't care what the theoreticians and the theologians of astrology have to say. We don't care about them. We don't hear what they say. What we want is we close the canon, we close the corpus, and we just do with it, and we make our own conclusions, we make our own applications, and we don't depend on what the elite of the astrologers has to say, or has to propose, or has to impose. and they don't try to explain themselves. They don't know why there is such rulership. They don't know why square are not as good as trine. They don't know why what is the origin of the symbolism of the zodiac. They don't care. And something more funny, if it is possible to speak about something funny here, is that everything is so much intermingled, it's so much mixed, that you cannot really isolate a factor and prove that this factor works or doesn't work. So the factor will work because you cannot prove it doesn't work. So you introduce a new factor, a new planet or whatever, or new criterion, and you say, well, you see, it works. Or I put it within the system and it works. It has been accepted by the system. It doesn't block the system. And afterwards they will say, well, you see, yes, I am right by using Pluto, although it has been downgraded as a planet, because it works, because it's combining all right with the older factors. And they forget to say that there are so many factors, so many angles, so many combinations that it doesn't mean anything. So there is a real struggle between practicians and theoreticians of astrology, and it is the only field of scientific research where the theoreticians are not listened to by the practitioners. Or, if you prefer, like in music, only the theoreticians of the past, of the 30s, of the 50s are listened to, but not the theoreticians of today. The matter is closed. We do not move, we do not change the scriptures of astrology anymore. And this attitude of closing a subject is, as I said in previous lectures, typically Martian, typically depending on not the planet Mars, but at least the energy of Mars. Mars is dividing. Mars is creating differences. Mars is saying, well, now it's finished, it's over. We abort, we stop things. While Venus, on the contrary, is open. It doesn't create divisions, doesn't accept frontiers. It is extending, and it has no limits in a way. And I'll say that there are two main characters, two main tempers only in astrology, in general, in psychology: the Martian type and the Venusian type. And I think the rest of all the other divisions, the combinations of all sorts of signs, etc., is something which is superfluous and useless. Okay? I would like to finish my lecture on technical consideration about houses. And I have progressed in my thought about houses. You know, with thinking on astrology is something which has no end, and you discover every day new factors, new approaches, new patterns. The question which I will ask in a few minutes here is, what is the use of the houses, astrological houses? What for? Today we tend to think that the astrological houses will give us details on of family, or marriage, or friends, or enemies, or career, etc. And we study the chart and we see what are the planets in different houses. The problem is that there are 12 houses and not necessarily planets in each house. And this is a factor which should awake our criticism, because I believe that initially the houses was a chronological system of prediction. If you take the first eight houses from the birth to the death, and I do believe that initially we had only 8 houses and not 12, you have a progression which corresponds more or less to the ages of life. The 8 ages of life, or 7 ages of life. And the way it was used initially was the following, and it had nothing to do with astrology, as a matter of fact. It was really a matter of divination, but of astrology in a way, because astrology is not... What is astrology? It's not necessarily something which depends on astronomy. It's something which has to do with time, with chronology. And as soon as you have a system which gives you chronology, which affords you dated predictions, it is already astrology. And from that point of view, I think that you had a system of 8 houses, and you had a pack of cards, of tarot cards, for instance, and you were putting the cards, or putting the cards by, as you do it when you practice tarot. You put the cards without knowing, reversely. You put the cards on the 12, on the 8 houses, and you see what are the cards, what is the card for each house. And it will define a period of 7 years. 7 multiplied by 7, 7 multiplied by 8. Well, it doesn't matter. It can be also another type of number, it doesn't matter. But the principle is that you will find that, for instance, the second house, there is such and such card, arcana, and it will give the climate of this period of time. And these 7 or 8 periods are equal, and your life is divided in as many periods, from a very total superficial system. And later on, it was related to a real astronomical or cosmographical process, which will develop during the day. And later on, it was not even concerning these ages, but it was only about the content of each period. What is my thought here? If you want to illustrate a cycle, you take examples. You can take all sorts of examples which give the illustration of a beginning and of an end. You can, for instance, say, well, I will describe what I do during the day. I get up, I get a shower, I eat, I work, and you can define mnemotechnically each period through a certain activity. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean by that what is important is to what it refers. So if I say, for instance, I go to work, and to symbolize this work I put a table, you don't have to think too much about what is a table. You have to remember that a table is a sign that you're going to work. You are at work. But progressively, they forget that it's only a reference to a cycle, and they take as granted the illustration, the symbols which are being used. And this is the way the historical knowledge is corrupted and loses its real meaning.